Hello, everyone. Welcome to my bedroom. Not actually, that would be weird. My name's Heidi Mavir from EOTAS Matters. I hope you're all okay. I am joining you this evening from Wakefield, and Natalie is not in my bedroom for another of our Changemaker interviews. So as part of my work supporting parents and carers of neurodivergent children, I connect with businesses, individuals, advocates, specialists, parent professionals, experts by experience who can bring something to the table to support our families, our schools, our educators, our advocates. So tonight I'm joined by Natalie Hayward from The Sensory Fix, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat about Natalie's work. So how are you? You all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So let's get a little bit of background into who you are and what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about your circumstances and how you landed here right now?
Yeah, so I am Natalie. I'm mum to Theo Clennon, who had a brain tumour in 2016. So I had a lot of difficulties finding appropriate services after his diagnosis. And then after that, it was appropriate settings for his needs. So as I have progressed in my experience, I have just learned to become very aware of all things brain related, all things sensory related, and I have a background in design as well. So I have now tried to move into sensory design, or I have moved into sensory design, trying to help others and trying to implement appropriate settings.
Amazing. And how old was Theo when he had his tumour?
He was 2.5 when he had his brain.
All right. And previous to that, he didn't need any specialist provision. He was a healthy, kind of regular child person. Okay, cool.
So yeah, we did think that everything was pretty much as expected, neurotypical is what we would, because obviously you as a mum, I suppose I'd done a little bit in my design, in my business as a designer. I'd actually designed for early years settings before I had my son. So I'd done nurseries, play centres, and then I'd gone over to the Netherlands to study Montessori before I had Theo. And then when I did have Theo, I decided that I really liked that part of design, children's settings, because it gave me a bit more of a fun aspect, which is what I like. But then when my son had a brain tumour and then had lots of needs afterwards, I just had to shift. I had to shift my thoughts, and I learned a lot from my experience about settings and about the appropriateness of different settings and how you can design to make it right for the child, rather than we see every day where we go now. So basically, just making sure that my home was appropriate for my son. But then as we've gone out into settings, I can see there is a lot wrong with the various different settings that we go to. Even some SEND settings get it wrong. So I've been trying to help in those areas to try and maybe shift people's perspectives and to try and educate people on the different types of disability and how these settings need to be more varied than they currently are.
Yeah. So what does that mean in practical terms? If you're like working with a school or if you're supporting a family, what kind of things are you doing?
So yeah, I suppose from my experience, my child struggled with many different settings. There wasn't just one type of setting. We struggled so many different settings to regulate. So it was like a regulation problem. It was a sensory problem. It was something that we had to find solutions. just to come up with the various different sensory solutions that would support not just my child, but then there were people that were asking me, well, how did you overcome that? You know, how come your child couldn't go to the beach and now they can? And so I was like, well, we've done this for 2 years and now my child can go to the beach. And I think people vary, the people that I speak to about sensory and about settings, when you're in the thick of it, when things are quite bad and your child's struggling to regulate, you do find that your OTs, they give you a sensory diet, and then you go to settings and you find your child is dysregulated, and then you just need to go home, and then you find that you just can't access places. So for me, it was about finding the right kind of sensory for my child to then move forward and progress. And so I've worked on various different, I suppose in a way, it's like the bridge, it's the gap between what the OT can give you, can tell you or advise you on, but then actually implementing that in the home. So what I do as a designer is say, right, well, actually, if you're experiencing this, then you can actually make something change. You can make big change by implementing, something at home to make it much, much better, easier, and to help your child regulate so that they can enjoy whatever it is you're trying to enjoy, like the beach. So for me, it took a couple of years, but I managed to get my child to actually be regulated enough to do the beach, which was it wasn't a priority, actually. It was just something that happened, but something that organically happened. So I didn't set it as a direct priority, but it just happened through the fact that I was analysing my child's his sensory needs, and then as a designer I was trying to come up with solutions. So
amazing. So it's like real blending of your previous career and your lived experience, like really unique approach, I guess. And what's really interesting is when we have conversations, and we have them all the time in our community with parents, and they've got children or young people who really struggle with engaging in things and are clearly dysregulated. And there's lots of kind of like up here conversations about how we talk to our children or young people about that, and what we can do and what we can ask them to do. And we miss the whole sensory thing. And those of us who have children and young people who have sensory differences, we usually know by learning it through experience that if their sensory system isn't regulated, all the rest of it is completely pointless, right? like we can have as many in-depth conversations about about all the things that might help them, and how could we have done that differently, and but if they're not regulated in their central nervous system, we may as well just we're throwing it away, right? Like their brain is offline, their brain is on fire, we're not going to get through to them.
Exactly. And settings, they tend to throw, I say, it's like throwing fuel onto the fire. So if your child is continuously a small fire anyway, then once you go to a certain type of setting, if the needs aren't met, or if it's not actually suitable, the setting is not suitable, then it is like throwing fuel onto the fire and just making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, of course, the trauma and the stress make it even more difficult to dysregulate. And the parent, at the end of the day, is the person that is left with the fire. So, whether it's not them that's caused it, whether it's a setting or whether it's, people or whatever, the parent is the person that actually has to deal with that fire. And often OTs, they're not actually doing the activities, or they're not doing the sensory, and they're not seeing the results, and they're not working with the child as we do. They're not there all the time to see, what works, what doesn't work. I mean, so many times I was told, try this, try that, and it wasn't appropriate because my child had like a pathological defiant kind of profile. So I was like, yeah, well, you can't actually do that unless he wants to. So you have to come up with a unique approach so that he actually does the task without actually understanding that it's a sensory thing. So it's not like by stealth, you know. So what I was trying to do was come up with a design my own educational method by sort of analysing my son's profile, but also thinking, well, my son won't be the only one with this type of profile that needs heavy work, but then won't do it unless I'm not the one telling him, you know. So it has to be like almost stealthy. So I was like, well, you know, just an OT coming in and giving me a list of things to avoid and a list of things to do wasn't enough. I was like, no, we have to actually be more specific, more focused. And I analysed it, and I thought, well, actually, you know, this could work for other people, and other people have tried it, and other people have told me that it works. So I'm like, well, let's make it bigger. Let's tell everybody about what we do and what I've done, and how I've made change. So yeah.
So in real terms, what has that looked like for what you've done with Theo? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah. So well, I think probably one of the biggest examples is the beach. So like I say, my son would not even look at a beach. Like if it was like in the visual, it was just like, I'm not going on it, Mum. You know, the grass, the stone, the sand, everything was just, you'd have thought we were trying to put him in hot coals. Like, you know, it was like, absolutely not. And now it's his favorite place. So if you kind of contrast where he was when he was 5 compared to where he is now, he's 10, like in those 5 years, he's gone from won't go anywhere near a beach to loves the beach. And then the other kind of example would be food. So we had a food restriction that was quite severe. So he would only eat chips for a while. And then now he's got a really varied diet. So those sorts of things are successful in what we've implemented. That's kind of, you know, there are things that he won't eat. Like I can't get him to eat a hot dog, but then a hot dog's probably not that great. But but it's one of those, I always say, you know, a varied diet is brilliant. And obviously, if your child's only eating chips or toast, for a parent, that's like a massive panic. You know, and you'll go to the doctor and they'll just look at you like you've grown an extra horn. So, you know, what you really need is some hands-on sort of, you know, like that knowledge that someone else has been there, done that, and this is what they did. I've got like tools that I did that worked. Of course, I didn't know at the time. I wish I'd have known at the time what I was doing was going to work, because then I might have relaxed. The trauma that you go through as a parent when your child's not eating or not eating a varied diet is so stressful. And yet, you know, all you want to know is how can you change that? And there are things you can do to change that, especially if it's a sensory based issue. So there are certain things, obviously, that there are certain illnesses and things that can impact on food. But my son's been through so much. He went through cancer treatment. He went through, you know, the changes. He was on TPN, so he was fed through his stomach, so for months. So there was times where I had to literally build a diet from scratch and then try and get him to eat, and then try and get transition from various different things. And so many people come to me for advice about that. And I always say the same thing, that, you know, a varied diet and a buffet of food, and although it's expensive, sometimes you have to just build it up. It's like that party food thing. Like I always say, you know, the film Mermaid, where she makes all the little party food and it all looks really cool, and it's like little dinosaurs and everything looks really treat-ish. And even though it's like a sandwich, but when you do that, kids are attracted to it because it looks appetizing, and they might not touch it, they might just look at it, but it actually builds that sort of representation in the mind that says it's safe, it's something that looks nice, it's something that I might try. My mum's not pressurizing me to touch it or look at it, and I might try it. It's not the cheapest method, but I can say it works. And it
so that kind of like low demand,
low
gentle.
Yeah.
We'll take it as it comes.
Yeah.
I'm open to having to put a lot of things in the bin if that's the way this goes.
I think that was it's a mindset thing, because I think people do look at you strange when you've got a lot of food in front of the kid that's not eating. Like, people will look at you strange. I remember ordering a couple of different dishes when we went out for food, and people were like, that kid's not even eating, and she's ordered like 3 different things. And I was like, yeah, because that's just how it works. And I only had to do it for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds like really expensive, especially in this day and age, but it depends how much of a problem you're in. I couldn't get any help from anyone, like professionals. So I was like, I have to fix this. And that was what I did. I made food look amazing, like, for kids. So I was like, right, let's make this look fun. Like the party food, get food out. Let's just put it everywhere. And eventually you just start picking at it, and you'd pick at one thing. You might just take one bite. But I was like, that's a win. And then eventually it started to change. And then within just a few months, he was having a varied diet, and people were like, oh my God, he didn't touch anything before. And I was like, yeah, it's changed.
Yeah. Because it felt safe for him.
Yeah. And like I say, there was no pressure. I mean, there was times when people, like I say, looked at me like, she's demented. She's bought all this food. But, it's like that time when you take your child to a party or a barbecue, and you've put sausages in front of them for years and they won't touch them. But then suddenly you're at a barbecue, and what do? Because everyone else is eating, they'll pick it up, and you're thinking, well, no, he doesn't like them. But, it's like that moment where kids do prove you wrong sometimes. But I found that doing that helped, and it did help. And it was expensive. I'm not going to lie, it was. That was one thing that, I can't lie about the fact that it's an expensive method, but it worked. So
amazing. And now you're working, supporting other families who have similar situations, who have children, young people who have sensory differences and might have particular challenges. And what's that work look like? How are you engaging with people? If someone wants to work with you, what does that look like?
Well, any kind of issue that, that parents are coming across sensory wise. So I'd say most people struggle with settings. So that tends to be if a school hasn't worked out, even if it's a SEND school, sometimes obviously parents end up having to do EOTAS because there isn't the right setting. With my child, he's got cerebral visual impairment. So that is really underdiagnosed within our community. And that is a specific group of parents that have to adapt their houses, have to adapt any kind of learning space. It's quite important. So it's all about visual. It's all about reducing sort of processing, like the taxing on the processing. So from the child's perspective, everything is too much. So the minute they step out the door, the noise, the visuals, change, birds, sky, a plane going across, everything is too much processing overload. So from if a child's got CVI, then they will have that need to reduce what's in the environment. So parents will have to almost block out things in order for the child to learn. So it's like changing where they will do their work, or changing their workspace, even if they're not sat at a computer, if they're not sat at a desk, you have to almost bring in the tools, the learning, the education, the resources. You have to bring them in to a clear space. So it's about changing the way you teach, changing your setting. Like if you wanted somewhere for your child to sleep better, you might have to have a more enclosed space to cut out processing. So it's about that, really. It's about almost, people come to me more for the fact that they're thinking, well, this didn't work. So they've put in a sensory room and the child won't go in there. And they're like, why? It's a sensory room. It's amazing. Look at this. I've done this, Natalie. I've done that. And I'm like, yeah, it's because the floor, although it's designed for children we send, it's not designed for your child's send. And I think, you know, that's the problem, is that most sensory settings, even, you know, even really well designed ones, you'll go in there and we think it's marvelous. We're like, oh my God, that's ace, you know, big bubble lamps and huge, you know, chairs that are heated, and, you know, you see all these things and you think that's marvelous. But unless it's appropriate for that child might find it completely overstimulating. And then you end up with a more dysregulated child, and you're coming home thinking, I've just spent £30 on that sensory experience, and it went really catastrophically wrong. And I've had that. I've gone places and come out thinking, well, you know, the opposite of what I expected to happen happened. Sort of say 6-7 years ago, I was in that situation where I was thinking, what about this setting doesn't work for my child? And then I started to analyze the different types of settings and how not every SEND setting works for every SEND child. You have to almost find your little niche and then work with that, which is, you know, it's difficult because each parent will have to navigate that. Each parent will have to learn about their child's sensory needs enough to it's not going to work.
Amazing. I love it that it's like bespoke and that it's really meeting people where they are. I'm gonna share your email address on screen, so if people want to get in touch with you, they can. You can find Natalie by doing a search on all of her socials. Just search for the Sensory Fix. You can also pop her an email address, and I will make sure that there's links in the replay to this video. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I'm excited to see what you do next. Keep us posted. We'll make sure that we do some sharing and that people know where to find you. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been awesome to hear a little bit about what you do. And thanks for being with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Being with us. See you later. Take care, everyone. Bye.